There is widespread agreement among biblical scholars that the earliest material in the New Testament is not the Gospels themselves, but the letters tucked in behind them, the so-called epistles ascribed to St. Paul, the author of Hebrews, Peter, John, James and Jude. In total, there are 21 letters, and they purport to be the correspondence of the early church as it argued over the finer points of doctrine and organisation. This material amounts to around 60,000 words and is thus extremely important for telling us about the very earliest phase of the Christian movement. The writers are supposedly companions of Jesus himself, or, in the case of St. Paul, someone who received regular guidance in visions and dreams from Christ in heaven. In a very real sense, then, they are our best guide and most reliable witness to the truth about Jesus. So what exactly do they tell us? Well, what is remarkable is what the letters don't tell us. For example, there is no mention in any of this material of Mary, the mother of Jesus, or for that matter, her husband Joseph. There is no mention of Nazareth or Bethlehem. There's no mention of a star, wise men from the east, a census, or anything at all to do with the virgin birth or the nativity at all. In all those 60,000 words, not a single aside or oblique reference is made to that wondrous event that we're to celebrate at Christmas. Perhaps even more remarkable is that in all those letters of the early church, there is no unambiguous mention of the crucifixion. Certainly not in the terms of it being an historical event. There is, for example, no reference to the crucifixion, though Paul uses the word crucified, it's true, 11 times. As in, for example, in Galatians, where he writes, "Before your very eyes, Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed as crucified." Now note those words, clearly portrayed as crucified. Is this a reference to the crucifixion story that we read in the Gospels? It sounds very much more like a theatre production of the type of sacred pageant that was common in the ancient world. Now, Paul also uses the word cross several times, but never makes reference to 3 crosses on a hill, for example. There's no word about Jesus' arrest. The only time that Paul uses the word arrest is in reference to his own narrowly escaped arrest in Damascus. There's no reference in the epistles to a trial, except that Paul refers to his own trials in the service of the Lord. Not one of the letters mentions Gethsemane, or the Mount of Olives, or Calvary, or the tomb. Perhaps most startling of all, besides a lack of an awareness of either the nativity or the passion of Jesus, is that none of the 21 epistles is aware of the disciples, and the letters are supposedly the correspondence between them. There is no mention, for example, in any of the letters of Matthew, purportedly the author of the first Gospel. There is no mention of Andrew, of Simon, of Matthias, of Bartholomew, of Thomas, etc. There is not even mention of Judas Iscariot. Now, before anyone objects, you're wrong, the epistles mention the apostles lots of times, let me stress, that is precisely the point. The epistles speak of apostles, not disciples. Paul calls himself an apostle, or refers to the apostles, more than 30 times. Peter also calls himself an apostle. Now, today, people often use the word disciple and apostle interchangeably, but actually there is a very important difference between them. A disciple is a follower, an apprentice or an acolyte of a master. But an apostle is a messenger, the advocate of a cause. An apostle needs follow no master. He can be his own